Hello everyone, this is Peter and welcome to another episode of News Plus brought you from Plus Agency. News Plus is a channel that's going to summarize what has happened in Sydney real estate market in the past week. If you're interested in this type of content, please make sure you watch, subscribe, share it to your friends and family who may also need the information. Plus Agency is a boutique agency located at 418 Victoria Avenue, Chatswood. If you are interested in property in Lower North Shore, Upper North Shore, CBD, Eastern Suburb, or Waterfront or Parkfront, please make sure you pay us a visit to get some of the best deals on the market. If you have properties fit into this criteria you want to sell, please make sure to come to our office to have a chat to enjoy Service Plus from Plus Agency. Alright, with no further ado, let's get this week's News Plus started. First of all, this is back to the Eastern Suburb. A beautiful suburb, a broken down property, and a historical crazy high prices. Vaucluse, this broken down shop and residence on Waterfront block sells for $17.1 million. 63 Fitzwilliam Street, Vaucluse sold for $17.1 million in the auction. The old shop on the Waterfront block was so bad, there were fears it would fall over before it could have been sold. But the auction it fetched incredible prices still. The double-story building on a 588 square meter block, long owned by the Goldberg family at 63 Fitzwilliam Road, sold for whopping $17.1 million at the River Double Bay auction room. Sources at the auction recognized the winning bidder as the multi-millionaire businessman Victor Cosmino, known to have been on the lookout for a harbourfront block to build a mansion for one of his three daughters. Cosmino and his wife Chrissy bought the $48 million estate Sutherland Park, long held by the family of the late Sir William and later trade in Southern Highlands, and a $25 million done up on the Wash Bay beachfront last year. Ahead of the auction of the old Vaucluse shop, agent Craig Ponty and Violet has been guiding $13 million, and auctioneer James Keenan called it onto the market at $50.2 million, and it just keep going to 500,000, 200,000, 300,000 offers. Came down slowly and gets the pace until it was rapid fire at 100,000 bids from 13.5 all the way to the end. There has been 7 registered bidders with 4 active ones. 17.1 million in Vaucluse, another amazing result for a broken down property. Alright, property investor with 17 home loans reveals surprise way rate rises have affected him. A Sydney investor who purchased 12 properties during the pandemic has been hit by a surprise increase in his loan repayment following Tuesday's rate hike. Harriet Patel settled on his 22nd properties purchased just a few weeks before the RBA raised the cash rate by 25 basis points to 0.35%. Despite having 17 mortgages and $3.9 million in debt, he claims the increase has only added $750 a month to the total loan repayments on his $8 million profile, far less than the $8,000 in net rent income he and his wife received each month. Having that heavily cash flow has helped me prepare for interest rate rises, he said, adding that he has factored in an interest rate rise of up to 6% when crunching the numbers on his profile. Smart guy. He said, while inflation was responsible for RBA's move to hike interest rates, but it was also responsible for rising rent. Having purchased all of his investment property in areas where low vacancy rate is currently in place, the buyer has been able to increase rent regularly. He said he's confident that interest rate won't go higher than 6% in the short term. If risk goes higher than 6%, I think Australia will be in trouble. He said no one could afford more than 6% interest currently because of the market. I have properties sitting between 300,000 and 500,000, but imagine people living in Sydney with a mortgage of $3 to $4 million. If rate went higher than 6%, I think a lot of people would be in trouble. That could burst the whole economy. I'm sure that is not a viable option for the government to consider, he said he expected the cash rate to grow as high as 2% in the short-term run. He and his wife started their property journey in 2010 when they purchased the first home in Western Sydney and built a granny flat for extra income. Soon realized this was the way to go and never looked back. 3 years later, they purchased a house on a large block in Mount Druitt and built a second unit while Mr. Petal or worked 2 jobs and saved as much as he could. That enabled them to purchase their dream home in Schofields before buying further investment into Queensland. Very smart guy, very inspiring stories. Where is the ceiling? Shock Sydney homes are for rent as housing shortages bites tenants. A Sydney rental home with a hole in the ceiling and the bathroom caked in grime has been listed for $550 a week as the city rent crisis shows signs of hitting another level. The 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in Ultimo was recently listed with agents telling prospective tenants to bring your own paint, brush, and ideas and make this your home. Discarded screen door and other items appears in the backyard and children's drawings a door on one of the walls. It was described in the listing as very original and tenants were invited to improve the property. Oh my god, this vendor is saving a lot of money, right? It is not knowing if the John Street property is currently in livable condition, nor it is clear whether a person will be financially reimbursed for their work in restoring the property. This is just what it looked like now. It seems that the market is crazy. Now we have this type of properties available on the market. Being a good location, we'll see how this turns out. City tenants have been squeezed by alarming rent increases, with typical rent on houses rising 19.1% over the year to April. According to SQM research, unit rents jumped 10.8%. So Sydney are in for a dramatic rent crisis at the moment. Alright, going into the north suburbs, Lancove home witnessed the longest auction ever. Very interesting, the Sydney property market remains very strong despite the growing fears of a REIT rise, with auction activities over the weekend proving to be super competitive. The auction of 29A Garling Street in Lancove saw the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom property sells $360,000 and $500 above reserve in an intense bidding war that lasted a full hour. It is a good example. Brought to market by Bell Property in the local, the renovated property has received 15 registered bidders, with 7 participating for initial reserve price of only $1.91 million. According to the selling agent, the property reviewed a starting bid of $1.7 million that increases with the increment of $10,000 and $5,000 each, slow, and that was subsequently followed by 45 minutes of 500 bids. Oh my god, $500 bids until it finally sold under the hammer of $2.27 and $500. The auction took 60 minutes with 168 bids. It's the longest auction I've ever hosted and also the longest our auctioneer Andrew Robinson has ever conducted, said the selling agent. During the campaign, we issued 27 contracts and 118 groups inspected, with about 80 people attend in the auction. If someone's saying, the market's cooling down, that the successful buyer, the family from nearby suburb Willoughby, will say otherwise. Alright, next one. Sydney home prices fall again as buyers and sellers grow worries of interest rate rises. Sydney home prices have begun to fall again, and more jobs are expected if the Reserve Bank of Australia pushes the button on the rate hike in May or June. Prices for all types of buildings, including units, townhouses, houses, dropped 0.1% over April, according to the PropTrack Homes Index released Sunday. Sydney was the only main capital to record a drop in values, with PropTrack flagging the city housing affordability was stretched. Growth in prices has been slowing since 2021, and PropTrack economist Paul Ryan said the market stagnated for much of 2022. Sydney has the weakest momentum going into what will be a period of rate rises, and affordability is more of an issue, so potentially the Sydney market will be more susceptible to price falls. Mr. Ryan said the April fall equated to an average of price drop of roughly about $6,000, and the typical houses now cost about $1.6 million, while median price of units was $762,000. So price drop was much bigger in city pockets where there was a greater supply of housing, especially high-rise units, with values falling even before the weaker April period. Unit prices in Punchbowl, Meadowbank, Chipping Norton and Kogarah were more than 60% cheaper than they were a year ago, and House Express said the senses of urgency from buyers were enervating and many were sitting out purchases, waiting to see what effect will the rate rises cost for the market. Comes the additional mortgage analysis shows that Sydney's higher property prices revealed to incomes and greater household debts levels have met and will be more vulnerable to rate rises. So let's see what we can end up at in the housing market after the rate rises. Alright, Sydney nurse amasses $2.6 million property profile across 4 states. A former Sydney nurse has proven how it's possible to amass a multi-million-dollar property profile without a big salary. Anna purchased 4 properties in 4 states over 6 years, including property in Sydney, Canberra, Adelaide, and 2 more. And they have a combination value of $2.6 million. It's a profile she started during her 13-year career as a nurse, where she held role as a clinical educator and a cardiac consultant, among others. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph, Ms. Wood-Lutton said she started investing after getting inspired by property podcasts, which also educated her a lot about the market. She bought her first property at apartment in Harris Park in 2017 with $170,000 in saving. She didn't spend on the package, she didn't spend on the travel, she spent it on the property. The Harris Park apartment was purchased during my ward nursing career. I was determined to save, so I agreed a lot of weekend shifts and putting my hands up for overnight and overtime whenever offered. Her second property in Canberra, purchased in 2019 with a partner using equity of loan of $50,000. She also sold around $180,000 in shares she purchased in her early 20s. For the Canberra property, I joined a fiance with my partner Andrew, and it was certainly a joint saving effort. Smart girl with a smart partner as well. Adelaide property was about 90% loan, so less savings this time, but felt more comfortable with that at this point. And then for the last property, they see so much growth in Canberra. They use equity from Canberra property to fund the deposit and buy a cost for the purchase into Woomba. And she said the Canberra property value rose about $300,000 in just 3 years. Last news of this week is Sydney auctions turned into grand for sellers during the first weekend of sales since RBA rate hike. Fewer properties have been changing hands at auctions amid the rapid cooling in the Sydney housing market, and rare homes that attracted fierce biddings this weekend tend to a price offering. There was nearly 700 city auctions scheduled for the week, about 200 fewer less than the week before, and close to about 400 fewer than this time last year. Not all auctions went ahead. Preliminary data suggests at least a third were cancelled, either because of a pre-auction sale or the vendor withdrew the property from the auction. So if that's the case across the board, that's not the case that in some of the areas we're just talking about. So Sydney market is always very controversial. It's always very contradicted as well. You see a news like this and you see a news like that in the same video that we're doing. So a lot of time is hard for me as well. It's not supposed to be uniform, isn't it? That's why if everything is the same wherever you buy, then there wouldn't be a good location, and that location there wouldn't be a strategy here and there. People can just go in and buy it. I think in any market, to buy in the smart area, buy in the right area was always the most important and always the most right decision to do. Alright, last one, talking about something with exceptional value and security for your money. This is something that's really you can put into consideration with data showing Barangaroo, low-rise, city, harbourfront is really something that's very, very rarely see drop in prices. Not saying it never gonna happen, but from the data that was showing, this is very secure for your money. And this particular property located at 503 27 Barangaroo Avenue in Barangaroo is one of those properties. A wide design living area, absolutely harborfront with beautiful views, a nice timber floor, built by Lendlease, who's pretty much one of the best builders and developers in Sydney. This beautiful 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom with 1-car space home is something you should not miss. If you have a budget around $4 million, please come here and check this out. This is on the low-rise CBD harborfront. Alright, so if you're interested in this particular property, please search 500 Street/27 Barangaroo Avenue, Barangaroo on Google, or you can visit Plus Agency's website at plusagency.com.au. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's News Plus. This is Peter Lee. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.